Really lovely.
Audrey's here.
Audrey's here. Oh, wonderful, Audrey. Let's welcome Audrey in.
Hi.
Already. Hello.
Hi.
Audrey,
Hi,
that's wonderful.
Audrey.
Wonderful.
Hello. Nice to see you all. Ah.
And you're looking good, and your hair's looking good.
Oh, thank you.
Audrey's a good friend of mine, a good friend of Caroline's, and we've even travelled together and been in Jamaica together at one stage, Audrey, haven't we? So that was really, really nice. We've just been a bit informal now, Audrey, before we switch the record on and get going with it all. But I'm so thrilled that you're able to join us. That's really lovely. Because
Well, I will tell you who my hook was actually, is Morgan.
Oh, well, yes.
Well, I haven't seen Morgan for so long, so it's lovely to see you.
Yeah. Just a warning, I have started the recording. Now I've switched to screen share. So.
Oh, and here's Yasus. Oh, it's lovely to see you guys. Thank you, Liz, for doing this.
Sorry, say that again, and we're just trying to get you linked.
Are you talking to me?
No, I'm talking to somebody on the phone at the minute. Chris Campbell. I can. I'll just try and do that. Okay. All right. Yeah. I send it on email. Right. Okay. I just need to multitask now. So we'll get going, and then I'll send the link to Chris, and he will join us. Chris Campbell from South Wales. So that's good. Right. Oh, I'll do that in a minute. So very formally, for an informal lunchtime conversation, I'd just like to say welcome to you all. It's really great to have had a response and to help us get started. So we had an idea of Black History lunchtime conversations because sadly we know at the moment that lots of us are either locked down at the moment or have the fear of lockdown coming up. And it's an opportunity for us to talk together, to share, and to increase our understanding about Black history. The particular strand of Black history that we're looking at is our shared history, the shared histories of Wales, the shared history of England, the shared history of Scotland, the shared history of Ireland, and all those other countries around the world which have a shared history with Britain. So that's our sort of theme, the way that we'll be going. We've got a range of topics that we're hoping to cover at some stage, but we're starting with this opportunity so that we can make sure that we can work the technologies and that we can see how we can move forward. So we're really excited, and this would be a wonderful contribution, I think, to the Black History Cymru 365 initiative that was launched yesterday by Race Council Cymru. So it's a contribution very much for that. And Audrey's a colleague from Race Council Cymru, so that's why I'm particularly pleased to see you, Audrey. That's really lovely. Okay, so the participants we've got at the moment are myself, Liz Millman from Learning Links International, my colleague Caroline Sansom, who's also from Learning Links International, and I have apologies from our other three directors. Sadly, Natalie Fagan-Vance had a bereavement and isn't able to join us. Better news from Sue Barnes. Her daughter's got the twins now, so she's up to her ears. And Ray Afalarin's working at the moment. So we've also had apologies from Sir Jeff Palmer. He's going to join us at one of the sessions, and that'll be really very worthwhile. And he's been doing so much, and maybe David will say a little bit more about that. But also, apologies from Charlotte Williams, Professor Charlotte Williams, who's going to be leading in Wales from the wonderful new initiative to ensure that Black history is taught in schools in Wales. And we've also had apologies from Bernard Janke. He leads the Jamaica Memory Bank, which is part of the Institute of Jamaica, and that's a fascinating and fabulous organisation. So I'm sure that we'll be hearing from him at some stage about the work that they're doing and link that into one of our sessions. Now we've got here on our panel David Alston. David is a specialist researcher in the Highlands and slavery. And I've found my conversations with David over the last few weeks have been absolutely fascinating. We've linked up on Zoom, got more confident with that. And David's a panel member and he'll be helping move things through today. And we've also got Simon Pringo from Belong Nottingham. And Simon, if you'd like to introduce yourself, but I'm just going to make us just change for a moment just to welcome Yasus Afari. Yasus Afari, founder of the Jamaica Poetry Festival and the wonderful Poetry in Motion. Yasus is joining us from Jamaica, and I can't tell you how impressed I am, Yasus, because it's 5 a.m. Is it 5 or 6?
6.
5, I think.
6.
Okay. So that's absolutely fantastic. So really brilliant to realise you're joining us now. So that's great. So over to you, Simon, if you could just tell us a little bit about your role and about Belong Nottingham.
Yep. So Belong Nottingham is has been going about 20 years. It's a refugee founded organisation and run organisation, originally founded by people coming from the Democratic Republic of Congo, that supports people in Nottingham who are settling. And we run, as part of that, a heritage program, which has now run 2 programs, one on a freed enslaved person called George Africanus, who settled in Nottingham in the late 18th century and ended up being a rare person who was allowed to vote in the early 19th century. He founded a successful business, married a local woman. So that was the first heritage project that we ran. And then we ran a project called African Perspectives on David Livingstone, which finished earlier this year. So this is our main exhibition panel. And it was really looking not at David Livingstone as a core figure, but rather at the people who worked with him and enabled him to do all the explorations and journeys he did, and the stories in particular of 3 of them who visited Nottingham in 1874, Abdullah Susi, James Tumer, Jacob Wainwright, who were all medalists from the Royal Geographical Society. Jacob Wainwright went on to meet Queen Victoria, had a racehorse named after him, so they had some quite fascinating stories, and they all went on to do further things despite, in the main, dying quite young. They all had quite incredible personal as well as geographical journeys, visiting 3 continents, traveling to many countries, and witnessing quite a lot of change. So we're now in receipt of some funding from the Heritage Lottery Fund to look at doing more digital heritage. So that's why we're partnering with Learning Links. We took part in one of Liz's events in Wales. I think it was at the end of 2018.
Yes.
And we're hoping to go out again with this exhibition at some point physically, including in Nottingham during this Black History Month. But we're also looking at having it as an online exhibition, and also building up an online library of events, of talks, as well as trying to create online reading and working rooms so that we can reach, because one of our challenges in reaching to the Black community, particularly the migrant community, is people's availability during working hours is difficult because people are working on 0 hours contracts. they're working, they have families. So we're looking at digital as an opportunity to work with people at different times and places, not necessarily trying to always convene one large group at one particular time, but to work with a large group flexibly when people are available. So it's a challenge, but something we're looking forward to exploring. So Liz, and I hope that gave you time to.
Well, thank you very much indeed, and it's really been fantastic these last few weeks as we've worked together on this idea. I shared the idea that I had for exploring our shared history with Simon, explaining that we obviously couldn't do a conference this year, which Simon was scheduled to attend, and we've done some very successful Black History international conferences over the last few years. So we're really pleased now that we can make this link. And what's really interesting is that Learning Links International works with volunteers, community volunteers, and that's similar to the approach that Belong Nottingham takes, although we do things in very different ways. So it's a really good partnership. So hopefully these lunchtime conversations will move us forward. So we're now going to move right on to our first presentation. So we're going to have three presentations. I've explained to you, unfortunately, that Natalie can't join us, so we'll have that poem on another occasion. But we've got the opportunities. We've got Dr. Morgan Delphinis, who I'll introduce in a moment, and then we've got Jean Samuel Mfikelon, and he's going to share some of his artwork. He's from Bangor in North Wales, and Yasus Afari will talk to us about the Windrush Words project, and then we'll see what then. So with no more ado then, I first met Dr. Morgan Delphinis some years back, but he's always been a bit of a hero of mine because he worked at City College Birmingham, but he'd left by the time I joined the staff team, and I often heard your name mentioned, Morgan. Oh yes, you should have met Morgan Delphinis. So when I did get the opportunity to meet Morgan Delphinis, that was great, and we did work together. Morgan had written the book on Caribbean and African languages, which was one of the project areas that I was looking at. So it's really great to have the opportunity to welcome you today, Morgan, and we're going to hear about the history and language of St Lucia, 1654 to 1915, and this is the title of Morgan's latest publication. So we're looking forward to hearing all about this, Morgan. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
And can I just jump in quickly there, Liz, and say, can people please mute their microphones while Morgan is presenting? And if you have any questions, please post them in the chat box so that we can come to them at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Brilliant.
First, many thanks for the warm welcome. The flattering statements. The book is about history and language in St Lucia, and the periods are basically periods for which I had evidence to write it. We move to the next slide.
Morgan, I'm not hearing you very well. Is everybody else hearing you okay?
Can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay, let me move closer to the computer. Is that better?
That's wonderful, thank you.
Okay, well, again, thank you all for the flattering remarks. The dates are dates I had evidence. The book is available on Amazon. If we move to the next slide. The main things I'll outline are the motivations, the context, the dedication and acknowledgements and then I'll take a kind of outline view of some of the main prime suspects in this history: Arawaks, Caribs, Africans, on whom I'll probably spend most of the time, free coloreds, Barbadians. Towards the end of the book, I talk about what I think this history says about the future, present, as well as my hopes for the book. Next slide.
Morgan, have you got something, excuse me butting in, have you got something on your computer that's maybe blocking your speaker? A book or something
Not
near
as
it?
far as I can note. It says here that
We can hear
speaker.
you fine now, just shout up.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
So if I'm roughly on the computer,
It's wonderful, we can hear you.
it's more audible. Okay. One of the things I say just at the beginning as part of the dedication, that to every problem there is a St Lucian. We must find or create more St Lucian, because it's a place which has got quite a lot of talent. 2 Nobel Prize laureates, and you walk into doctorates all over the place, including the priests, one of whom has his doctorate in math. So as well as being a people who are multi-talented, however, like all other human beings, they can cause you problems. So it's looking at it as an opportunity, and also looking at the context of human beings. If we move to the next one. In terms of the acknowledgements, and I'll read this section. About 30 years ago at Gore slave fort, in the room facing the slit in the wall, where the captives would go through to the smaller boats, leading to the larger boats and the last memory of home. When I was there, I suddenly felt an electric current between myself and the soil. Next slide, please. And what I pray for is that I've used this current through the ancestors to help cleanse the damp, to enlighten within the darkness, to pass on in my own small way the lightning of freedom, what we call Zéclair Liberté in Patois Creole. Next slide. In terms of the Carib end of the history, the Caribs came in, and as we know, they decimated the Arawak and took over the women, producing a group called the Island Carib. In terms of their encounter with the French in 1655, it was an all-out war with the French and the Island Carib fighting both in St Lucia and Martinique. What is clear is that Martinique and St Lucia were dealt with almost as one unity as far as the French were concerned. And for the Caribs, certainly every island was an area of, I guess, trying to fight at the edge of extinction. In the St Lucian case, 2 French governors were killed by the Island Carib, even one who married a Carib woman, but that didn't stop them. Basically, they jumped through the window and cut off his head. And we have some of the words, particularly for the flora and fauna, such as agouti, hair, lébiché, things for sifting, which all come from the island Carib. This was followed by the Black Caribs, who in St Lucia and neighboring St Vincent, you've got to, I'm sure you all know, St Vincent is south of St Lucia and Martinique to the north. So in St Vincent and St Lucia, there were Maroons in the hills, plus the Island Carib. They merged together and became the Black Caribs. the enemy of my enemy, friend. And with that, they fought against the British. The British were particularly annoyed in St. Vincent, and they deported the Black Carib in 1794 to Honduras. However, within Creole, we have the words mun and butu, which indicate that origin. If we move to the next. As far as the Africans are concerned, I divide it in the way many histories of the Caribbean are looked at: resistance, revolt, and revolution. In terms of the resistance part, St. Lucia was owned by the Compagnie des Îles d'Amérique, which had transformed its Senegambian assets into La Compagnie du Sénégal. This company had always named the governors in St. Lucia right up to the year 1674. So what you're getting in St. Lucia is somebody who already knew where he was going to get his captives from, because he used to rule Senegal in the first place. If we move to the next. Within that period, we start in St. Lucia with Wolofs and Mandinkas, therefore from Senegal and Gambia. And as the French work around the West African coast, they also get some Congolese and Umbundu, and also some Dahomians, i.e. the Evefons. That Evefons obviously are the key figures in the revolts in Haiti. And the Congolese and Umbundu, obviously the kind of, I suppose, resultants of wars within the Kingdom of Congo, and the resultant peoples being sent to the Atlantic slave trade. The next one. This is the slit I was talking about, but I was on the other side. When you go through that slit in Gore, you then get put on the smaller boats, which row you to the big boats to take you to the Caribbean. Next one. In the St. Lucian case, we were lucky, as in Jamaica, there were hills. And wherever you got hills, you had resistance and runaways, and a kind of different history and culture to, let's say, flatland like Barbados. I always think of Bob Marley's song where he says, "One of these days, you're gonna hear a voice say run. Where you gonna run to?" In our case, the rock was the shelter, as in the Jamaican case. So there were many runaways from plantations in St. Lucia and Martinique. However, when the French Revolution came in 1791, we thought that was the best thing since sliced bread. If we move to the next one. And the favoring factors for us was that the Petits Blancs, if you like, the little whites, went to St. Lucia, while the Grands Blancs, the big shots and the barons, remained in Martinique. So both the Petits Blancs and the St. Lucians would have been people more favorable to the French Revolution than the barons, etc. The Maroons were already in the hills and forests in St. Lucia, and Napoleon scored an own goal in relation to his Code Noir, kind of one drop of black rule. Pre-1724, mulattoes were automatically free due to their higher percentages of white blood. After 1724, Napoleon's reforms meant they have a drop of black. So that means they were now to become slaves. So many of them ran from Martinique, or rather sailed from Martinique in St. Lucia by boat. And so At times, one of our jokes in St Lucian Creole with Martinican say, "C'est un passe-pater, garçon," meaning you came by land, man. But we knew that in that period, they came by boat. We move to the next one. In terms of the revolution, there was a choice made by white French soldiers and citizens in St. Lucia to declare the droit de l'homme, to join the French Revolution. As I said, we thought it was a great thing. Nous le pensons comme la plus belle ou jamais de sortie de main des hommes. We thought it was the greatest thing that had ever come from the hands of man, according to the St. Lucian representative in Martin. From the planters' point of view, they were unhappy because we set up the guillotine in Soufre and the capital Castries, and we began head chopping. And so while we were happy, they were unhappy. If you move to the next one. However, although in those number of years, many years of build-up, and then about 3 years of action, we had our own way, and our language developed within those years also. The empires struck back, and 17,000 British troops invade to put us down, and hence the song, "The Grand Old Duke of York, he had 10,000 men. He marched them up to the top of the hill and he marched them down again." They were marching up and down the hills to get at us. After many attempts, they succeed. We then go into guerrilla warfare in the woods. However, even later on, we were defeated again. And many of us were then deported to England on a boat called the London, with death awaiting by a freak storm. But it's very difficult to escape a freak storm if you have chains on you. So on the coast of Devon, there are pieces of evidence of death of St. Lucian rebels. Our brothers and sisters in Martinique faced, if you like, a more thorough kind of processing, deportation to Gorée, the same previous slave fort for some of the leaders. However, those people were firstly interrogated in France before being sent to jail in Gorée. We move to the next one. The next group of people, the free coloreds or mulattoes, were a kind of middle classes is one way of looking at them. Some other views of them are also available. Funnily enough, in Creole, there's an insult term for them called cacabeche, literally the feces of the whites. In 1823, the free coloreds formed 8 free colored militias to hunt Negmawan or Maroons and counter revolts in addition to the 4 white militias. They also, similar to the then coloreds in South Africa, petitioned the legislature to remove previous legislation which restricted their rights in contrast to whites. They owned 1/6 of all slaves in the island. As well as that, many of them were far richer than many whites. And so they wanted to remove any legislation which would stop them, if you like, demonstrating their wealth. If we move on. The next group of people in are the Bajans, the Barbadians. They were sent mainly to civilize us because after all, we didn't speak English and we wanted to do strange things like run away from slavery. And when the opportunity arose, to revolt against it. So they featured as teachers in a mainly Patois Creole speaking population, teachers to teach us English. There's evidence, however, that many of them were offloaded from Barbados into St Lucia, and 32% were criminals. However, the kind of ambiguities are there. In 1905, many of the police force in St Lucia were Barbadians, as the St Lucians, given their kind of traditions of revolt and runaways, did not want to join the police. If you move to the next one. In terms of the future in the past and present, I'd say that language and cultural formation, acquisition of land, is a key theme. One of the things is that towards and in early colonial rule, towards the end of slavery and early colonial rule, a lot of land remained in St. Lucian hands. However, this is in contrast to the present day, where, like other kind of Caribbean territories, selling off land to Chinese people and other peoples, and some of our writers say that perhaps our sovereignty is for sale. It poses a number of questions. Where can we get leaders with the kind of commitment and determination of our maroon leaders of the past? One. That's kind of ambiguity demonstrated by some present events. For example, in November 2015, a woman of 97 was raped. If you think of that in Creole, bon Dieu Seigneur, diable ka marché en la oui, moun di ki an vie moun nou ka porte respect, te croisé parmi nous. Moun violé an vie madame, ki ni 97, ki maladi ki tombe an ti pays nou. Next slide. So that translated, God our Savior, the devil walk openly in the streets. People say that an old person, people who we hold in respect, was destroyed in our midst. People raped an old lady who was 97. What malady has come down in our little country? Next slide. These are unthinkable acts within Creole and Patois that seem to be advertisements for the new philosophies of individualism and human dislocation from any concept of community, let alone a common history. Violence restricted to use against past enemies, and plantation racists, is now turned inward with no apparent profit motive, but perhaps expressions of deep anger and self-hatred. In such a situation, who needs external enemies? We grow our own. Next slide. In terms of that, my hopes for the book, one, it gives specific references to many sources that certainly for me were hidden before. So I was able to get some further information from the National Archives, Dakar, and some of the other archives in England. In St. Lucia and perhaps the rest of the Caribbean, the St. Lucian dimension is available in Caribbean history, but it's not a formal part of it. So I'm hoping the book can provide more information. Slide. And it also supports St. Lucian history and culture curriculum in Key Stage 2 geography in the British national curriculum. It's a history that points to defeat, struggle, and victory, as well as clarifying past, internal, and external enemies, and as an indicator of such forces in the emerging present. And I end up with a phrase in St. Lucia and Martinique, Chebe wed, hold life hard, despite everything, despite any problems, hold life high. Thank you.
Wow, that's fantastic. Gosh, so much to think about there, Morgan. So we did say that we'd have questions through chat. So if you want to think of a question, you can pop it into the chat, and maybe I don't know, David, have you got a question that you'd like to ask if you unmute yourself?
Yep, I do. That was a wonderful presentation, Morgan. I'm an historian living in the north of Scotland, and my particular interests have been particularly in Guyana. And one part of that interest is the role of free colored people in the era of slavery in Guyana. I wondered if you could say anything about the different roles of free colored men and free colored women in St Lucia.
In terms of the free coloreds in St Lucia, it was dominantly almost a uniform class behavior. In a sense, they formed the kind of middle road between black people and white people. Particularly if we looked at the women, in every case, they're taking the place of the white woman. And the white man at the same time was having lots of concubines or other relations with the black slaves. So it was more a question there of the acquisition of land, in that obviously the mulattoes and the whites would inherit the land, while the black offspring wouldn't. So I didn't detect any great ambiguity in terms of gender in that way, other than perhaps the position of women in many societies. In Jamaica, you've got a very good book by Braithwaite about the Creole society there. In the St. Lucian case, you can see them as partial transitions with some St. Lucian cultural forms, in that you may have dances which are, if you like, highlighting white inheritance, the quadrille, for instance, but it is danced in different ways. In terms of, let's say, a free colored and a white way of dancing the quadrille, that would be one way. But there's also the quadrille danced by black people, which is different. So I think they definitely saw themselves as a class. And they definitely, from the financial point of view, in a way were resentful of whites having so much power over them, whereas in some case they owned a lot of the harbor and the harbor trade in the capital castries. So for them, it's the kind of ambiguity that I probably detect more in the Romano-Celts of Britain. On the one hand, they're partly Celtic. On the other hand, at the end of the day, civis Romanus sum, I'm a citizen of the Roman Empire. That's the way I make my money. In terms of kind of looking at their genetic stock, I'd say that the free coloreds would usually seek, certainly at the initial stage, other mulattoes such as themselves. You know, they wouldn't want to marry downstream. Initially, obviously, it would have been unions between white men and black women. But I think in the St. Lucian case, they quickly formed a relatively large class, or if you followed the Indian system, almost a caste system, which sought to solidify itself in many ways. Sorry, I went too far.
That was fantastic. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was.
Sorry at that point. I'm going to ask Audrey. Audrey, have you got anything that you wanted to add? Question.
I'm absorbing such a wealth of information, and thank you very much, Morgan. And I also hope the ancestors will bless you for this narrative, because it's really important. You know, it's actually, thank you for invoking the ancestors to help you with this. Because from my experience, I don't know very much about the French Caribbean, and we're lumped together as a group when we've got so many different cultures and so many different histories. And I was wondering, for instance, when were the French Caribbean emancipated, for want of a better word? When was slavery abolished in the French Caribbean? Because I'm from Jamaica, so I have that sort of narrative, and there's a British narrative going on with that.
I think you'd get probably a more accurate date from my book itself.
Yeah.
Rather than my aging memory. I'd say 18 something for sure was the emancipation. But what happens is that even though you get an emancipation date, the actual end of slavery and ending of proceedings is totally another story. For instance, in my research in Gambia, you come across a Gambian king who wonders, how strange it is that they're telling them that, they want to stop slavery. That is the British. Because as far as that king is concerned, slavery is quite normal. And, you're getting in the way of his business. So in order to deal with that, the Gambian people who were involved in acquiring slaves would get younger and younger people, such as children, and they'd go further afield from the domain where the British were. On the other side in the Caribbean, what you then get is slaves coming from different routes. So coming from Barbados, then St Lucia, from Martinique into St Lucia, etc., when the official slave trade ended. And then the third strand in St Lucia was the importation of people from India. And they were brought in to carry out the labor. But before them, in about 3 boats, one of the boats called the Water Witch, you had people coming from Sierra Leone. So you had these Sierra Leoneans brought in ostensibly as indentured labor. But when I did the calculation of the death rate on the ship, it was the same death rate as the average slave ship traveling into St. Lucia. So while I think you can get dates, I think please forget about the notion that it ended. Ask yourself, how did it, slowly come to some kind of end? Because if we look at things such as Hitler, okay, you invade, you get hold of the people, you incarcerate, and you try and get them to stop doing what they're doing. But for a long while, I'd imagine many of them are wondering, well, how dare you? I don't want this to stop. So it's a more complex social question. By all means, go for the date, but ask yourself, how do people try business as usual?
Mm.
Then, if you want to take it into the modern times, what is in the head? What is the ideology, white supremacy and other things, of trying to continue a relationship which is over, as far as I can see. But these are kind of more social questions, in a sense, in analysis of society. How did the Aryans, after invading the North after and putting down the Dravidians, was the caste system just really an afterthought, or was it a continuity of a wish to conquer that is still not satisfied up to today? So the human mind is one a strange thing, but after history, you then look at society. But cutting the long story short, by all means look at the dates, but I think by far more appealing, what does the mind want to do to continue with these flawed relationships? How do societies then continue in the wake? And then thirdly, what is it in the human consciousness that wants people to foster, continue these type of relationships? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was really helpful to ask that, Audrey.
I'm sorry, I go on too long.
Absolutely not. I'd love to respond. We could have a little two-way chat, but probably we should let other people talk, because I'm very much interested in the post-trauma effect that continues.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if ever you're around London, you know.
We'll get you
Well, we will talk. We will
buy me some rum.
And the answer to the next question is, if you want to know any more, then please get the book.
Yeah.
And could I jump in there, Liz?
Yes.
Because something you said, Morgan, about, you mentioned Dahomey as a link there linguistically, and what you just said, Audrey, about post-trauma. The Porte du Retour in Benin, I think, acknowledges some of these complexities you're referring to. I don't know if you've ever visited it.
What are you talking about?
It's a monument in Benin on the.
Oh yes, yes.
Yes, and I think it covers a little bit what you were talking about there, about this complexity, because it acknowledges the participation of some African cultures and kingdoms in the slave trade, at the same time as it welcomes people back to try and heal the wounds. I think that addresses Audrey's point. And it's a place where you mentioned this electricity you felt in the Ile de Gorée, which I felt very strongly when I walked along the old slave track, past the tree where people used to turn around 3 times to try and leave their memories behind, and then down to the beach where they were loaded onto ships. So yeah, it's something quite important, and yeah. So
I agree with you. I mean, some of the kind of things are different in different African countries. So I am very pleased where the people acknowledge, we were part of it. Let's do better next time.
Morgan,
But sorry?
Can I just put in and say, because the next country we're going to go to the Congo, to the Cameroon, the Republic of the Cameroon, because you've got Jean Samuel.
Okay.
Keller. So we're going to say thank you ever so much, Morgan.
No problem.
Audrey, you can carry on talking at 1:30. Okay, and maybe there'll be time for questions there, but we'll try and keep to our time now. Okay, thank you so much, Morgan. That was so interesting. I could ask 101 questions. So it's great to, now we're going to just have a short presentation, 2 minutes. We're going to learn a little bit about the work of Jean Samuel Mfikelon. Well, that's delightful, and it was, we thought, a good way to welcome himself here. So Jean Samuel, we're now going to have a look at, and you're going to talk about a few of your paintings that you're going to be able to share with us, and that's really lovely. And if we can give you sort of five or so 10 minutes, then we've got an opportunity for Yasus Afari, and we do need to recognize the work that he's done over the years, since 2007, when he first came to the UK to help to celebrate Black History Month, and every year since then has done something really significant to support us. So Simon's just sorting out your pictures here, and first of all we'll just have this little bit here, okay? And then when Jean Samuel's been able to tell us about a couple of his pictures, 3, 4, whatever, then we'll hand over to Yasus Afari. Okay, Jean Samuel, is that all right?
Yeah, thank you.
That's good. Okay, this is a fantastic one. So over to you.
Well, like you heard in the small presentation, most of my paintings, if not all for now, their basic theme is my culture. And I now prefer to call myself an African contemporary painter. I've experimented through different ways of paintings, but at the end of the day, I realized that the best art for me would be the art that reflects my origin, where I come from, because art is a way to tell your story to the world. An authentic story about yourself can only be told by you. We, the Africans, or people from African descent, we are unfortunate in the world because other people told our stories to suit what they want to get from us or to suit their own private desires. But I think we have an opportunity in this century, no matter whatever we do, to tell our story as Africans in our own way, in our own works of life. So as an artist, I have decided recently that my paintings would be Afrocentric 100%. So, and I come from somewhere, my culture, the culture of the Nsor people in the northwest region of Cameroon, where we have the African mask. As you heard in the presentation, it's not just for decoration or for entertainment, but the mask carries or embodies the spirit of our ancestors. I walk around the world with the African mask in me. And some people even consider me to be the African mask itself, because when I look at one, I remember my great-great-grandfather. I remember my great-great-grandmother. I mean, I remember that I'm connected to someone that's not here, but is looking down upon me from somewhere and giving me the courage to face the world as I should. It gives me the confidence, the dignity, the integrity to face tomorrow without being afraid, no matter how some other people see me to be. So this painting that you see is my own visual conception of how the mask could still be. And I'm very confident when I put the gaze looking straight forward. I mean, it's like talking to me, like go do what you want to do, achieve what you want to achieve, and tell the world about us with all the positive and good intentions, because our children and our children's children deserve that. So that's all I can say about this small piece, Leaf. Thanks.
Brilliant.
All right. This second painting is titled The African Gothic. For people who are very versed with art, there is a famous American painting called the American Gothic, which there's a peasant man and a woman. Maybe they're coming from the farm or something. So when I looked at the painting, I wanted my own African version of it, because I really love this painting. I've experimented through many traditional forms of painting and learned from other different artists. Sometimes I copy their work in my own perspective. So yeah, people who know a bit about art will understand the American Gothic. This one is called the African Gothic. It's been collected by a renowned art collector in America called Troy Body. So it's no longer with me, but I'm happy to share the copy with you. Thank you. Yeah. I painted this work when I read the story of African slaves working somewhere in the Caribbean in the sugarcane factories. And I thought I could have a visual presentation of what they were doing. So this is a simple, I would say an impressionist painting of Africans that have been transported to the Caribbean to work on the sugarcane plantations. And also this painting has been collected too. It's somewhere in America with another art collector. Thank you. Yeah, this one is work in progress. It's work in progress. It's a simple African scene with purple backgrounds or so. At the front, I'll paint like family activities. A grandfather sitting and talking with his children or his grandchildren, and women doing their normal African cultural cause, children playing around the compound, and so on. So it's still work in progress, not yet completed. Thanks. This one again is another painting whose theme has been borrowed from a Western civilization. The title is called The African Beatles. For people who are used to music, you know about the group The Beatles, John Lennon, McCartney, and the rest. So there are four of them playing. It could be I Imagine or something, or Imagine or something. So yeah, it's like I entitled the painting The African Beatles. Thank you. Then this one is the mother and child, the bond between the mother and child. In my culture, there is an eternal bond between the mother and child that begins from conception to when you are born till when you die. Every child remains a child to their mother, no matter how old you are. For example, as I am, even I am in my early 40s, my mother is still my mother, and she is the one that can tell me things, and I respect them unconditionally. So this painting shows the bond between mother and child. They're interwoven, I mean, in a very, very strong metric that nothing in the world can ever shake them from it. It's a way for me to respect my mother because thanks to her, I'm who I am and where I am. I think she gave me the first waves of faith that have moved me around the world. And thanks to her, I'm here today. So I'm happy to share my mother, and I'm happy to share my mother with everybody. Thank you. Yeah, you know, this one is about, I mean, animals, African animals. I thought that I should also do some painting of the animals that I see them at my backyard. You can see, but I decided to do it in a bit abstract, figurative way. The lion, the elephant, the lioness, the zebra. But as you see, the work is still work in progress as well. The lions, they don't yet have their whiskers. The eagle is not yet well blended, and so on and so forth. So I'm still working on it, but it's just about animals that I see in Africa. Wow. This is one of my greatest art pieces that I've ever made in my life. And for some reason, I have refused to sell this painting. A few collectors wanted it, but I thought that if I sell this painting, it's like cutting part of my soul, because these are results that I've been working for more than 20 years before I could achieve this. And sometimes certain things, they come spontaneously. And when you give them away, you never do them again. So I can compare this, the love I have for this painting, like the love that Michelangelo had for the Mona Lisa. Like, I'm so attached to it. And this painting embodies many important aspects of my own culture, of where I was born, the culture of the Banso people in the northwest region of Cameroon. Because the culture is made up of African masks, music, animals. For example, like the cock or the rooster, because we use it for our sacrifices. We have the lizard in clay pots. There is a gong we use for our music, and so on and so forth. So this painting can be like an encyclopedia. So eventually, I'm going to write a book about this painting to explain it more. So for now, I can just say that it embodies my culture and my ancestors. I mean, I'm very, very attached to it. And I'm happy to share the copies with you. Thank you. Well, hello?
Sorry,
Yeah.
this is fabulous. So this is the last one you're going to tell us about, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the last one. This one is another African mask as well. And around the mask, there are some symbols which I don't have time to explain them now, but some people do not know that the African civilization also developed languages around the different parts of Africa. I've spent some time now trying to learn those languages and some sacred codes. That some of my paintings actually is like I'm writing a letter to the next generation. And this happens to be one of them. Someday they may be decoded in one way or the other. But for now, we can just see an African mask still embodying our ancestors. I would like to say that before I decided just to be an African contemporary artist, I was first of all like an artist prostitute. I used to copy from different artists in the world. I learned a lot about Western artists, the Van Goghs, the Michelangelos, the Paul Gauguins, the Pablo Picassos, copied their works, learned to paint like them. But at some point I realized that I can never be another Michelangelo because he was telling his own story and was part of his story. So I thought that I should go back to my own roots. There is enough to tell the world about Africa, and there is enough to paint. So I decided that the world became a new blank canvas to me. And after that, it was not easy at the beginning, but I'm happy that I've got positive responses in the last few years. And I am quite settled and happy as an African contemporary painter in North Wales. And I'm happy to share my story, my culture with the rest of the world. I do that with confidence, and I feel like I'm proud to do it because every culture, no matter how you look, how you think, your orientation, every culture is worth respect, is worth being appraised or applauded for. And you who tells your story should be the first person to give your story the respect it deserves. We Africans, we have been waiting for some people to come and canonize our stories for us. No, but we have to take responsibility and stand tall around our good stories, no matter what we do. You can be the poet, you can be the writer, you can be the teacher, you can be the painter as me. But when you tell your story, know that the world has the right to listen. Hopefully someday our works of art will be bought billions of pounds around the world like any other work of art, because they come from the same human ingenuity that everyone else has. I thank the organizers of this occasion for all the, for this moment, this launch talk, and I'm happy to share with you. So I think this is the last I can say for now, because we are already running late out of time, I think. Thanks, Liz, for everything, and thanks for listening.
Oh,
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, and thank you for letting us get some insights into your paintings. And I think, certainly we'll invite you to come along again, and you can carry on telling that story. Now, if you want to ask Jean Samuel questions, then maybe at the end of the session, maybe you can put them onto the chat. But I'm now going to introduce Yasus Afari, who's been so patient and at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's coming up to 6 now over there in Jamaica. Yasus has worked on activities to do with Black history, as I said, since 2007. I'm not going to, I usually give Yasus a very big build up, but I don't want to take your time, Yasus. I want to give you the opportunity to share with us. So let's unmute and big up Yasus Afari. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo.
Yeah, thanks, Liz, and good morning.
Good morning.
Are you hearing me clearly?
Good morning.
Yes. Can hear you
Yes.
fine. Yep.
Oh, Audrey, nice.
Good morning.
Chris,
Morning, Yasus.
yes, and I found the presentation from Dr. Delphinis, is it? Yes, to be inspirational, as well as the artistic work, which painted an interesting backdrop against which I would like to present what I'm about to say. As a poet, and he alluded to the work of the poets and poetry, we paint with words and thoughts and imagery, mental images, just like he does with the paint and the brush and the canvas. What happened though is that when we're talking about, we want to reference poetry and reference the Windrush words and the Windrush writing network. But we want to put a context because, context determines content and nothing happens in isolation. And when we are speaking about Black History Month, then we have to look at the origins of humanity, the origins of civilization on the planet Earth. And Mama Africa is the cradle of humanity and the original custodians of the planet Earth. And so certainly, Africa had its great origins and great civilization and accomplishment in astrology, astronomy, chemistry, alchemy, the sciences, spirituality, religions, culture, art, technology, science, and you name it. And so the idea of the human journey is really the idea of African history and its shared history, and how Africa civilized the other members of the human family and the inhabitants of our planet Earth. And so, like the sun rises and sets, nations rise, nations fall. Civilizations rise, civilizations fall. And so it was the role of Africa to fertilize the human journey and the human experience. And so when Europe was being awakened from their dark ages, they were blinded by the brilliance of African civilization. And so grouping in that darkness and the moral and economic and social deficiency and insufficiency, they gang raped, sorry to be so blunt and graphic, but gang raped Mama Africa. And this is something that we want to stick a pin in, because Mama Africa is the mother of all. And so the gang rape of Mama Africa we see as a genocide, a crime against humanity, but it is an act that is sacrilegious, incestuous, and diabolic, because it is incestuous because she's the mother of all. It is sacrilegious because she's a sacred temple. It is diabolic because it is the invasion of a sovereign entity, a sovereign existence. And so, speaking fast forward to the notion of the Windrush, we often speak of the Windrush arrival, but there is no arrival if there were not a departure. And so we want to reference the notion of a Windrush departure, where the societies that were a part of the transatlantic construction were further disarrayed, disoriented by the extraction of people who should have helped build up that society to retain its glory as African people who were enslaved. Then they were disrupted and relocated to the so-called motherland to help to build after World War II, made false promises which were not kept and have not been kept up to this day. And so you left children with grandparents, with relatives, with the mercies of a community to go and look after your motherland business and to live on the streets paved with gold. And that was quite not the case, because you were met with no Irish, no cats, no dogs, no blacks, or whatever else they were. And the sort of insult and indignity and the failed promises. And so that added insult to injury. And we would have seen what happened recently in the fiasco that visited that same so-called Windrush generation. And so a part of what we were doing, what should have happened in May this year, was for us to have had a Windrush departure event in May to commemorate the departure 70 odd years ago. Due to the COVID pandemic, some people say scamdemic or plandemic, or all the above, whatever it was, that was not able to happen. So for the part of the preliminary work, as it relates to the departure and the arrival, we went to the Docklands to again research the context, and we went to Tilbury Docks and we engaged the people at the docks and the people there. We went into North and South Wales and engaged the community, trying just to make preliminary links and building bridges. We went into the schools, both in Clarendon, where incidentally, we went to John Austin College, that is at Pennant. And Pennant got its name from the enslavers from Wales. And so we did workshops in John Austin College. We did workshops with a range of schools across North and South Wales. And we engaged the community, and we engaged the Windrush generation, and we did preliminary research and work. And so now we are in the process. It would have been the Building Bridges book anthology that came out of those workshop experiences in Pennant, Clarendon, and Wales. It's called Building Bridges, which speaks to the intention and the methodologies. And so that should have been published in May to coincide with the Windrush departure. But due to the pandemic, that didn't happen. But we are now planning to publish it in December. And we want to include works of other people with whom we have been networking. And so certainly, at the back end of that, we want to do also the Windrush anthology, which would have collected some of the works from both sides of the Atlantic, I would think, that would speak to the ongoing struggle to reassert African dignity and to reclaim the dignity of the people who were dislocated and the families that were disrupted in the interest of England and UK, generally speaking, and to heal the indignity and the insult of the mistreatment and the continual disrespect and ill treatment that our people have received, both within that narrow context of the so-called Windrush generation, as well as the wider context of the transatlantic genocide. And so our poetry, the art, the academic, the entire spectrum of the human experience and of the arts really speak to healing in the general sense, but more specifically to reassert and to reinstate Africa and Mama Africa to the position of glory and honor, and the position of the matriarch of the human family and the custodian of the planet Earth. Now, in the interest of time, I'd wrap now. I mean, I will take a few questions if that would help clarity. If not, that's quite all right. But I'd like to share maybe just one poem in the interest of time, which speaks to us as individuals, as communities, as groups, starting the healing process from where we are, using what we have, as limited as it might be, to effect that change, to engineer a new faculty of interpretation, to create and to disseminate a new narrative, even a narrative that would speak to enslaved people rather than slaves, a narrative that would speak to the enslavers as themselves being slaves, slaves to the demonic possession which would have resulted in the genocide and in the gang rape of your mother. And so this poem is I-pen, which is mightier than the sword, and which speaks to us using what we have, and speak to what us as poets, and I in particular, using the poetry for healing, for reconstruction, for reshaping the narrative, telling our own story, the Black story, the story of the human journey. Observation, inspiration, meditation. Charged with vibration, climax reaching orgasm, I pen mechanism is ejaculating, and I see men flowing from my pen. Warriors of humanity, enemies of autocracy, champions of right, children of light, fighting against evil, Satan, the devil, soldiers of the army, destroying apartheid and poverty, establishing free man, free woman, equality and liberty. I tongue is the pen of a ready writer, writing upon wings of time. I mind writes upon the fleshy pages of my heart. I eyes the mirror of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I'm seeking divinity, propagating I thoughts by the powers of telepathy, giving thanks and praises unto the Most High, His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie, as I see men, women, and children flowing from my pen, I pen, I pen, mightier than the sword, every time. Thank you.
Unmute.
That was beautiful.
Thank you very much indeed. That was fantastic, Yasus. Thank you. And the Windrush Words Project, Geriai Windrush Words, supported by the Welsh Government, is a wonderful project, and we've been doing lots of background work towards it all, and we're going to create Windrush writers. When I say we, Learning Links International works very closely with Yasus Afari and his company Senyacom. But Yasus, we're really honoured to have you as a part of our lunchtime conversation at 6 o'clock in your morning. It's really very special for us, so thank you very, very much indeed. I'm going to suggest now that we don't take any questions yet, but Audrey Wright, who's here, offered, as our good friend Natalie Fagan-Brown isn't able to be here, it's her mother's funeral later today. So respect to Natalie and her family, but also Audrey, it would be really lovely if you would like to share the poem that you offered.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you, Yasus, for those powerful words. I can't follow them, but I think this poem might somehow, and then we can possibly have a chat after that. I wrote this, I've moved to North Wales, as some of you know, and this poem is based on a bit of that narrative. Let's just see. I don't know my poems by heart, so I'll have to read it. So when I got here, people ask me often, where do you come from? What brought you here? So my response, I remember a place where I'm cradled by the mountains, rocked by the sea. Remember a place where the mountain them cradle me, where the sea rocked me in our skirt, up the gully, on top of the hill, we can see far, far. Plenty tree, plenty green, plenty sea. Remember a place where they know my name, they know my mother, know my father, know my family, me a smaddy. Me know so we come from way back. What Timbuktu them call it. Me people them travel a Egypt, reach back home at the mountain and the sea. It's all me up here. Me know say summer with the palm boat. Pack up, stink up, can't breathe. But we reach. I one place them called Jamaica, near the mountain, by the sea, where they make we walk, broke we back, take we woman, kill we picnic, for nothing. What is all you up here? Me know say me come from far, far. Must be one place we name France, where they fight, near the mountain, by the sea. Fight so bad them call them dispute, for sword. Them call them Jew, make them run. Travel far, far, reach clear as Sandaman, where them make them walk, brought them back, kill them woman, take them picnic for nothing. Vivian Jew, run clear of Virginia, where them make them walk, brought them back, take them woman, kill them picnic for nothing. But how did you end up here? Must it true one place where named India, near the mountain by the sea? Then bring me back for walk, till we back broke, left with woman, left with picnic, Mfikelon or nothing. Pero como llegaste aquí, runway, hungry, go clear up Panama, near the mountain by the sea, look for walk, till me back broke. Then take me woman, kill me picnic, for nothing. What are you come from? Must be from one place them call Scotland, plenty ill, and the sea skirt over our feet, near the mountain by the sea. Is all you gone clear of Scotland? Is all you are not there? Hungry belly, catch boat, come a England, reach a Southampton by the sea. Best suit for look walk till me back broke. Send for me woman, then kill me picnic for nothing. Me no see no sea, me no see no mountain, grey subtle, gone back home, where them know me name, know me family, me a smaddy. Take me woman, left me picnic, I'm all right. How did you end up here? Linty Dodd. Picnic reach or not, Wales. I've come a long way, baby. Back to the mountains, back to sea, back to home. Du luxe calme volete. And that's a homage to my parents, Alvin and Mary West, and that actually describes my family's journey up to a point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Audrey.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that in Jamaican as well, really to give the story.
And can I just add to say honour to Natalie's mother and blessings, and thank you, John Samuel, for sharing your mother's narrative with us. Thank you.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
Audrey.
So thank you.
Very much.
It's just been a really good lunchtime conversation. I hope you enjoyed your lunch as well, or you're going to. So I don't know if anybody's got any other particular questions other than, or I will say my thank yous. Just to say thank you. Oh, Chris, lovely to see you. Come on, Chris Campbell from the South Wales Jamaica Society.
Good morning, evening, wherever you may be. Blessings and love. I'm very grateful to be here this afternoon. It was very inspirational. The information what I heard, firstly from Morgan. Well, we've been looking at information and history, but as Audrey adhered to, is that we only have an English perspective. So it was very interesting to hear your perspective and St Lucians and their struggle and what they've gone through. And I'll be looking into it myself to see what I can learn. And I must say, it was very visual and heartfelt, so I could understand that your book is a good learning tool. And this is something what I'll be saying about each and every one of you. Mikael, the artist, just the beginning of your presentation with the music and the art coming through, it had a great present. You know, it made me feel like I was home. Just the music and the art and everything was flashing. And when you spoke so strong and clear, with so much conviction, and when you spoke about the ancestors and the masks, I understand how we envelope our ancestors and create things to pay homage and translate through them. And it's excellent that you're going through Welsh schools. Hopefully you might be coming through South Wales much more, and maybe we can use you there. Yasus Afari, actually, your presentation again, very art feeling, very visual, and all of the presentations was visual to the spirit and to the art. Again, I've heard some of your work quite a bit now, and again, never ceases to amaze. I think you undervalue what you brought to Wales. I think you never showed the parts a lot of where you learned the kids how much we are together, what brings us together. I think with your ice and water story, you know, which was what went very well in Wales. So actually, I just want to commend everyone, and it's very nice to be here this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Chris, because that's perhaps saved me saying lots of thank yous.
And Audrey, yours was another visual story. Sorry, Audrey, but we talk all the time. But I was
We
just
see each other all the time now.
all the time.
Further. Thank you. Yes, I just want to thank you for getting up early in the morning. I know you always do. Thank you so much for joining us here and all the work that you continue to do. Honour and blessings to all your work. I'm just picking out each person, but I do want to particularly thank Yasus, because your dedication to this work is profound. Thank you very much. And thank you, Liz, for bringing us together, even though you are in Australia and you haven't said what time it is there.
10:30 at night.
Okay, so early night for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Audrey, also for coming here and joining us. And I truly feel blessed. I feel that I've got friends around me who we can continue having lunchtime conversations. Heaven bless Zoom, that's what I say. But just brilliant presentations. I read your slides when you sent them, Morgan, and I read the slide about to every problem there is a St Lucian, and we must find or create more St Lucians. I thought, well, that's really nice, but how do you go about, you know, I mean, it's going to take a while to get lots more St Lucians. And when you read it, and I thought, to every problem there's a solution, and we must find or create more solutions. So I think that was just a wonderful theme to have come through this, because we are trying to find solutions. This whole Black Lives Matter, Black history, we've got to find solutions. We can't carry on as we've been going on. So that was just beautiful. So thank you so much. We have a website that is dedicated to these lunchtime conversations in the hope that will be organised. And it's www.spanglefish.com/Black History. So we'll be putting the link to the recording. We'll be putting information about Morgan's book, maybe a summary of presentations, maybe Jean Samuel will be able to put up the link to that clip, because that'll help us to keep together. So thank you to everyone. Thank you for the panel people who've supported to getting this going, to David and to Simon particularly. Werner, we haven't seen you, but we're glad you've been here. And Karen, I am so thrilled that you're here, and we haven't seen you either, but we'll be in touch soon, Karen. And thank you to Chris as well. And a special big thank you to Yasus Afari for making this effort to come and join us and to be part of the Black History lunchtime conversation. So we're not missing out on your presence during Black History Month or Black History 365, Black History Cymru 365. So we've got that link with you. So I'm just so grateful. Thank you very much indeed. I hope I haven't missed anyone out. Thank you then. Okay, see you then, Audrey. You can talk to Morgan again. All right.
Okay, we'll be in touch, Morgan.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye. Sweet.
Blessings and love, everyone. Blessings and love.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. So I think we're done. So I will close the meeting, but I hope we have the chance to talk again, and maybe some of you can come to Nottingham at some points with your talks and exhibitions and paintings and poetry. I think that would be lovely. So thank you, everybody. Yeah, and good morning or good night.
Okay. Right. Thanks very much. So if you wrap that up and you switch the recording off,
Yes.
that would be lovely.
Yeah.
So thank